Welcome everyone to part 2 of my 40 Final Fantasy soundtracks ranked. Well, it is now 41 Final Fantasy soundtracks ranked. I was about a third the way through editing this episode when I found the album for Final Fantasy XIV, Endwalker, is now available on music streaming services. I listened, I scored, and I have ranked. Fortunately, Endwalker ranked higher than the first 15 albums I ranked in part 1. So I can leave part 1 alone and slot it in where it fits quite nicely. Talking of part 1, here is a recap of the leaderboard so far. Of course, all the rankings have adjusted up one to accommodate the late entry into the list. Yes, I did take the scroll from the end of part 1, adjusted the text and sped it up. This part was originally supposed to be everything ranked 25 to 11, but with Endwalker now included, I will run through everything ranked 26 to 11. So, without further ado, let's dive back into the wonderful world of Final Fantasy music. Starting the countdown now, in 26th place we have Final Fantasy XIII 2. Track count 79, total listen time 5 hours and 37 seconds. I was expecting this to score higher if I am honest. I remember rather enjoying this soundtrack when I played this game. The direct sequel to the most Marmite flavoured Final Fantasy in the series. Final Fantasy XIII 2 was a bit different and added an enemy catching mechanic where monsters would fill the third slot of your team. It also introduced us to one of my favourite villains in the series with Caius. How did the music fare? This soundtrack is the first to get not one, but 2 tracks awarded a 2. Those were track 21 and track 22, Unseen Intruder and Unseen Intruder Aggressive Mix. Ugh, the music isn't that bad, but the singing is just awful. On the flip side, I awarded 8 8s, 2 9s and 2 10s. I bumped a 9 up to a 10 while revisiting this, and that track has become my favourite of the soundtrack. Some 8s I want to highlight are track 11, Full Speed Ahead. A fantastic upbeat take on the main theme of the game. I love the violin, or is it a fiddle? I'm not quite sure. It is great all the same. It has an eclectic mix of instruments and the tune is all over the place. Track 12, Noel's theme. This is a beautiful piece of music and a great theme. Track 64, Sarah's theme, Memories. I love the melody on this one and a great song. This game has some amazing themes in it. Track 78, Closing Credits. A blend of all the great themes featured in this soundtrack and overall a great track. There were 4 more songs that scored 8s, but I can't spotlight all of them or this video would go on for a decade. Let's look at the 9s and 10s. Track 4, Outro's Champion, was awarded a 9. This has an amazing theme which carries on the same sound from Final Fantasy XIII. Track 36, Caius' theme, also scored a 9. This is just epic and sounds like it belongs on a high-end stage show. For the 10s though, track 52, Chaotic Guardian. Maybe an unusual choice, but seriously this track is so good. I think most people only listen to the opening and skip the rest, not realising what awesome music they're missing out on. Very good. And then there is Noel's theme, Final Journey, which is track 65.
Long ago, when I was just a boy.
Originally I gave this a 9, but on repeat listening I bumped it up to a 10, and it has become my favourite track of the album. I enjoyed it that much and found myself singing along to it. The lyrics are fantastic and it is beautifully performed by Kokia, one of the best songs in the series in my opinion. This soundtrack is a great addition to the Final Fantasy XIII trilogy with some really nice new themes.
I would go back in time, change what's to come.
In 25th place we have Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood. Track count 105, total listen time 6 hours, 3 minutes and 38 seconds. I am nearly done with Final Fantasy XIV. These albums have quite possibly been underserved here, but I can only go with my gut on this, and having never played the game, I have no real connection to the music. They mostly benefit from using songs taken from other Final Fantasies that I have played. One day, maybe when I've had a chance to experience 14 for myself, I'll revisit this little experiment. As for now, Stormblood takes the number 25th slot with an impressive 5 10s, 3 9s, 5 8s and nothing below a 5. First off, here are all the 8s I awarded on this one. Now for the 9s and 10s. First up, track 14, Crimson Sunrise. I really like the panpipes on this one. Then we have track 41, Old Wounds. I originally awarded this an 8, but after a few more listens it felt more like a 9. I love that piano. Maybe I should do a compilation of the best piano pieces in Final Fantasy music. Track 51, Wizardly, also scored 9. This is old school wizardry, has a great tune, great beat, and all done in that old 8-bit style. Fantastic. Track 77, A Battle Decisively, was awarded a 10. Another fantastic remix of a track from a previous game, and of course it's a remix of one of the best battle themes from the entire series. You've gotta love this. Then the album goes and remakes the entirety of Dancing Mad, has scored each piece a 7, 6, 8, and then giving 10 to track 81, Dancing Mad, Movement 4. Amazing. Track 98, Boss Battle, stole another 10. What? The boss battle music from Final Fantasy XII is in here like, yeah, give me all your high scores. I'm not even sure if they made any changes to it. Guess what this scored on the original Final Fantasy XII soundtrack? Finally, another steal from Final Fantasy XII, track 101, Flash of Steel. Just take all the 10s from the other games, why don't you? The last 10 and my favourite track of the album I gave to track 93, Under the Weight, from Astral to Umbral. Heavy, fast and crazy is the way I like to describe this one. And are they shouting potato? Under the Weight grew on me and was a 9 for the longest time. In fact, as I was editing this video, I listened to it and enjoyed it so much I made it a 10. I had to re-record this part of the entry. A really good soundtrack and the third best Final Fantasy XIV soundtrack I scored. In 24th place we have Final Fantasy, the PlayStation version. Track count 36, total listen time 55 minutes and 31 seconds. Well, here we are where it all started. Well, nearly. The PlayStation version of the original Final Fantasy takes the 24th slot. I never played the PlayStation versions of these games. I have only played them on the Game Boy Advance. Again, these early games get the benefit of having fewer tracks, so they only need a few tracks to score well to really push them up the charts. This one is no exception. First, this did score 1-4 in track 14, Dungeon. Repetitive as always, as these dungeon tracks tend to be, especially in the earlier games. Tracks to get the juices flowing and all scoring 8s are track 8, Chaos Shrine, track 16, Airship, and track 32, Mini Boss Battle. The ones truly worthy though are track 7, Main Theme, these main themes always do well on these older soundtracks. And track 19, Battle. Yep, my head is already bopping. Nothing scored a 10, but a solid soundtrack for the first game in the series. In 23rd place we have Final Fantasy, the original. Track count 20, total listen time 20 minutes and 21 seconds. From the PlayStation version to the original now, how does this compare? Well, the PlayStation version scored 3 8s and 2 9s. While the original scored 2 8s and 2 9s. But due to the much smaller track count, the 8s and 9s on this soundtrack make up 20% of the overall score, as opposed to 14% with the PlayStation version. The original pips it to the post. Track 11, Dungeon, still got the annoying score of 4. Track 5, Chaos Shrine, scored an 8. And track 13, Airship, also scored an 8. Where this differs to the PlayStation version though is in the 9s. Track 4, Main Theme, still scored a 9. But but the other 9 went to track 14, Mount Gulg. I really like this version of this track, where I did not like it anywhere near as much in the PlayStation version. The PlayStation version only scored a 6 as opposed to a 9 here. The battle music that scored a 9 on the PlayStation version only got a 7 here, so there is enough of a difference from one version to the next to make a bit of a difference in the scoring. The original wins out and takes 1 spot higher than its PlayStation counterpart. In 22nd place, we have Final Fantasy XV, Volume 2, 1 of 2. Track count 84, total listen time 4 hours, 57 minutes and 54 seconds. Now I have to say, I really enjoyed Final Fantasy XV. I sunk over 100 hours into it and did all the DLC. I enjoyed nearly every second of it. It had its flaws, but then it did a lot right too, and the music is exceptional in places. Fun fact, Yoko Shimomura, who worked on Final Fantasy XV, also produced the music for the Kingdom Hearts series. But I will forever love this woman for her work on Xenoblade Chronicles, one of my favourite JRPGs of all time that has an equally amazing soundtrack. Let's get into what I thought of this volume. This volume covers the DLC for Gladiolus, Prompto, Ignis, and the extra content and changes for the final chapter they added in the Royal Edition of the game. Looking at the score breakdown, over half of the soundtrack scored 6 and above. Nothing below a 5, which is always nice to see. There are 7 8s, 3 9s, and 2 10s deep inside this one, so let's take a look. A few of the 8s I awarded go to Track 1, Shield of the King, theme of episode Gladiolus. I really like the strings here. I'm surprised looking through I only gave track 6, Battle on the Big Bridge, a 7, but I stand by that decision. It is good, but doesn't get the blood pumping like the other iterations. Track 18, The Fire Within, is a great track and scored an 8. It has a lovely bit of piano in it. I think the music from Prompto's DLC is all around very good. It reminds me of a Christopher Nolan movie, like the snow section from Inception. Track 59, The Blazing Tactician, the high tempo here really gets me moving, and then those strings come in with that fantastic melody. Here are some of the other 8s I awarded on this one. For the 9s and 10s, I start with a banger of a tune with track 21, Sound of My Heart, which scored a 10. A freaking awesome piece of music. I love it so much. Just a shame the Motor Slay minigame thing was the worst thing Final Fantasy ever did. I hated that minigame with a passion. The next standout for me was track 44, The Wrath of Swords. This scored a 9. I very nearly gave it a 10. It is very epic, but just not quite perfect. A more somber piece now getting a 9, and once again, beautiful piano work with track 61, A Lightless Journey. Track 69, Apocalypsis Magnatus, also scored a 9. But the best of all is left for the last track, with track 84, Moonlit Melodies. I wish I could make music like this. I need to learn to play the piano. What a piece to end on, and well deserving of a 10. It only gets better from here. In 21st place we have Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. Track count 63, total listen time 4 hours, 39 minutes and 23 seconds. Endwalker, the 9th album for Final Fantasy XIV that just made it into this experiment. Only one more Final Fantasy XIV album to go. This album did really well despite only having 2 tracks that are from previous games. It scored 110, 4 9s and 5 8s. The first 9 was track 1, Endwalker, Footfalls. It has that grungy rock sound that immediately made me think of Nirvana. It's a great song, and when the main theme comes in at 1 minute 49, that's when it got bumped up to a 9. What really helped raise this album was the instrumentation. A lot of the album focuses on the piano. So many tracks have great use of that instrument, such that tracks that would have scored a 5 just instantly got a 6 or maybe even a 7, just because of the piano elevating it. Use of a piano doesn't necessarily mean it's an instant smash, but it's certainly helped this album. I think if the focus had been on a different sound, this would have been down in the 30s. There were 3 4s awarded on this one. Track 19, Home Beyond the Horizon. It's not necessarily a bad song, but having the old gramophone style sound throughout it just made it annoying to listen to, which is a shame because I quite like the vocals in this. Track 21, Tremble. This is just atmospheric background noise. And track 45, Echoes in the Distance. Another track that is distorted and it sounds like a song that is about to get started but never does. Let's go through the 8s, the rest of the 9s and the 10s. Track 15, On Blade's Edge, scored an 8. A nice rocky tune with great use of strings and vocals. Track 26, Neath Dark Waters, Scions and Sinners, scored an 8. Beautiful piano piece on this one. Track 28, Imagination, Duality, scored a 9. Wow, another fantastic piano piece. Only thing keeping this back from being a 10 is the fact it is a piano solo. If there was something else to accompany it, even if it was just very subtle, a few strings here or there, this would have been a 10. Track 29, Welcome to Our Town, Endwalker, scored an 8. The town music from Final Fantasy IV. Originally this was a 6, but then that piano came in and I was like, yeah, that's now an 8. You see what I mean about the piano really helping this album. Track 33, Heroes Forge Ahead, scored an 8. A very nice heavy tune. I will jump over the 10 for now and come back to it at the end. Track 43, Answers, piano version, scored a 9. Answers is a brilliant track, and a piano version is worthy of a 9. The next 9 went to track 53, Endwalker. I gave track 1 a 9, so how could I not give this a 9? This is a fantastic track. Track 54, The Tale of the Star, got the last 8. Love the beat on this one, and it has that main Final Fantasy theme in it, which just tickles that nostalgia gland. My favourite track on the album though is track 40, Answers. This song was a 7 for the first half before I realised what it was. When you get to about 3 minutes and 30 seconds, it just went straight up to a 10. I already gave this song a 10 on the Before Meteor album, and this version is just incredible. Amazing song, and deserves the only 10 I awarded on this album. A last minute addition to this experiment that very nearly made it into the top 20.
Bearing sins of the past, for our future is taken. Born of strife.
In the 20th spot we have Final Fantasy XI. Track count 51, total listen time 2 hours, 30 minutes and 38 seconds. Here we are in the top 20. Final Fantasy XI is another game from the series I have not played. Everything from here on up, except for one other, I have had the pleasure of sampling its gamely fruits in context. Final Fantasy XI, being an MMO, and not really wanting to, or at the time, even having the ability to play it, I've never experienced this juicy morsel for myself. I am a little surprised to see this break into the top 20, but here we are. This soundtrack scored 6 8s, 3 9s and 1 10. This album starts off strong. Right out of the gate, track 1, Final Fantasy XI opening theme, is awarded a 10, and deservedly so. I think Final Fantasy Theatre Rhythm has a little to do with the scores in this soundtrack, as playing that game so much exposed me to some of these great tracks. In fact, the first 4 tracks of this album all scored really well. Track 2, Vanadil March, received a 9. I like the steady pace of this one. Well, it is a march after all. Track 3, The Kingdom of San Dioria, I hope I'm pronouncing these right, this scored an 8. I like the melody that kicks in at 13 seconds. And track 4, Ron 4, scored another 9. This has a fantastic melody and reminds me a lot of Final Fantasy IX. It has a very similar sound. There are a few more 8s peppered throughout this soundtrack. Track 13, Heaven's Tower. This one grows and gets right in your head. It has a nice sound to it. Track 14, Saruta Baruta, reminds me of Kakariko Village from Twilight Princess. Track 20, Voyager. A very pleasant and tranquil piece. I always enjoy these types of tracks, although they rarely hit the 9s and 10s. Track 30, Mithra, is something very different. I really like it. It's very out of keeping with the rest of the soundtrack. And finally, track 51, Vana'diel March No. 2, is a nice bookend to the album. Unfortunately, the second half of the soundtrack was very middle of the road, with most songs scoring a 5. Only one more track takes a 9 in track 49, Awakening. I almost gave this a 10, but it's not quite that level for me. My favourite track on the album was track 1, Final Fantasy XI opening theme. Luckily, nothing scored under a 5, so this was a pleasant surprise of a soundtrack, especially as I have never played the game before. In 19th place we have Final Fantasy XV Volume 2, 2 of 2. Track count 63, total listen time 3 hours, 9 minutes and 21 seconds. I did a little bit of a cheat with this soundtrack. You see, this album is technically only 43 songs long, lasting 2 hours and 12 minutes. However, I wanted to include the music for episode Arden on here somewhere, and seeing as it looks like that was never released separately, as far as I can tell, I have added those onto this album. I listened to a playlist by Mikea87 on YouTube. That playlist is 20 tracks long, and I have added it onto this album. I will note, I cannot find an official track list for episode Arden anywhere, so I am relying on this playlist for accuracy. The last 2 tracks are voice tracks, so I decided to leave them as 5s. The volume covers the extra events they put into the game, like the Chocobo Festival, the Assassin's Creed crossover, and some other bits. To be honest, if it wasn't for adding the Arden stuff, this album would probably be much further down the list, somewhere in the 20s or possibly 30s. This album scored 4 10s, and 3 of those were from the Arden episode, so it really did help this one. It also scored 1 9 and 4 8s. Track 12, Afro Sword, is the first track worthy of a mention and scored an 8. Perhaps an unusual one for me, but I can't help but bob my head to this. The first 10 goes to the next track, track 13, Party Around the World. I love this piece of music. It's so good and worth going into the challenge menu, or whatever you call it, just to hear it. I remember it always looked as if Prompto was tapping his foot to the music. It's quirky and it's fantastic. Track 17, True Love, scored an 8. A sombre and emotional piece. Track 23, Your Friendly Neighbourhood Assassin, got an 8. I've never played the Assassin's Creed games, but this extra content was a lot of fun. The music in it was pretty good too. Track 28, Everything is Permitted, scored an 8. And I gave track 29, Festival de Chocobo, a 9. It's a great track and fits the festival stuff brilliantly. That is all the high scoring tracks for the main album. The other high scoring tracks all come from episode Ardyn, which I enjoyed very much. Ardyn was a brilliant villain, and the DLC really fleshed that out. I understand it shouldn't have taken a DLC episode to do that, but hey, it is what it is. As the Ardyn stuff is not technically part of this album, the track numbers don't really mean anything. It's just how I have listed it on my workings. Track 55, Condition to Hate, got a 10.
No one came to each other, teamed anyone but the backstabber. It's the obvious one, but it's really not by many. I'm the only one cautious. A lot of
This is a great track. I didn't think it would be something I would like, as it is a little repetitive, but it does go past that and I found myself thoroughly enjoying it. Track 57, Guardian Battle, also scored a 10. It has an awesome guitar riff in it that I really enjoy. Kind of reminds me a bit of Final Fantasy VII. The last 10 went to track 59, Final Boss Battle, Somnus. What a track! Very good. It has the main theme in there too, which I love from this game. Consequently, this is my favourite track on this album. Nothing in episode Ardyn scored an 8 or a 9, and the rest were 5s, 6s and 7s. However, episode Ardyn really helped make this entry. So possibly a bit controversial, but the music in that DLC was thoroughly enjoyable for me and I had to include it somewhere. This felt like the most natural fit for it. Where will the main Final Fantasy XV soundtrack land, I wonder? In 18th place we have Final Fantasy VII Remake Plus. Track count 106, total listen time 5 hours, 12 minutes and 31 seconds. Here we go. First of the 3 albums that covers the excellent Final Fantasy VII Remake. The Plus soundtrack includes a lot of what I like to call the in-between music from the game. All those bits of soundtrack that didn't quite make the cut for the first album for whatever reason. This album has a lot of those styles of tracks, and then it has extended versions of tracks already featured in the first album. Naturally that would mean it doesn't quite get up there. Let's see what we find, as it's still a great album. As a general rundown, there is nothing below a 5. There are 8 8s, 8 9s and 3 10s. That is the first album to score that many 9s. First, with track 1, we are treated to an extended version of Bombing Mission Infiltration, which got a nice round 8. I'm not going to mention all the 8s, but track 16, Let the Battles Begin, Merc's Job, is worth a mention. They really went to town on this soundtrack. Here are all the 8s this album scored. So let's move on to the 9s and 10s. There are plenty of them. Track 2, Anxiety, False Memories, I gave a 9. I love the piano in this track and the wind instruments. There are these subtle, sinister tones that genuinely invoke a sense of anxiety. Masterful. The first 10 comes along with track 19, Airbuster. This is phenomenal and a testament to everything Nobuo Uematsu. What a track, and what a version of this track. I remember headbanging to the original when I played it back when I was a teen. This isn't just a reimagining of the music, This is an evolution of the music. Rude drops in on track 31 with the Turks, Rude, to claim an amazing 9. I love this fight with Rude, he's such a cool character. The next 9 is awarded to track 48, Ghoulish Symphony. I really liked the train graveyard in the remake, and this fight in the factory was one of the most intense battles in the game for me. Track 58, Infinity's End, sounds like it belongs in Final Fantasy 13. Not a bad thing, I gave it an 8. You can really tell this is a Masashi Hamauzu track. I'm half expecting Snow to drop in. The next 10 I awarded on this album was to track 67, The Valkyrie. I freaking love this track. There is this element of desperation running through it, like you're being hunted down by a Terminator, and then you get that awesome melody with the brass instruments juxtaposed against the strings. It's so good. At 2 minutes and 5 seconds is where it's all at. Give it to me. Oh, and using this in the Rebirth trailer? Chef's kiss. Over to track 81, Specimen 80512. A great take on the battle theme used in this boss battle, worthy of a 9. Another 9 I gave to track 91, Genova Quickening. Quite possibly one score I may regret. Should it be a 10? It's very good, but I'm waiting to see what we get in future instalments. It could be better is all I'm saying. And the final 10 of this soundtrack goes to my favourite boss battle in the game, track 95, Rufus Shinra. The music during this fight is so good. It's such a good one-on-one fight. Well, it is when you get rid of Darkstar. The music complements the battle and is so good to listen to outside the game as well. You may see a theme here. All the best tracks are from boss battles, but then that's when the music in this game is at its best, or at least for this album. All the good non-boss music is on the other album, but you'll have to wait and see where that is ranked. The last few 9s I awarded to track 98, The Arsenal, track 101, Midgut Expressway, long version, and track 106, Ending, Out of Destiny's Reach. My favourite track of this album is without a doubt though, track 67, The Valkyrie. Such an incredible piece of music. It would be interesting to see how this list were to be altered if I folded all the soundtracks from a single game into one. So for example, I took the average of the 3 Final Fantasy VII Remake soundtracks and gave that one score. I might do that at the end and see what happens just for the sake of it. In 17th place we have Final Fantasy IV. Track count 44, total listen time 58 minutes and 18 seconds. I have not completed the original Final Fantasy IV, I have however completed the 3DS version. I would say it has one of the more memorable cast of characters in the Final Fantasy canon. Kain is one of the most recognisable early Final Fantasy characters in the series, and that is a testament to its legacy. It also has a nice soundtrack. Let's take a look. The game scored 1 10, 2 9s and half a dozen 8s, but it did drop a 4, so let's start with that. No surprise, the 4 went to track 21, Run. Another annoying repetitive piece. I gave track 4, Theme of Love, an 8. I know that is a much beloved piece, it's great, but there's nothing more for me to warrant a higher score. Track 7, main theme of Final Fantasy IV, scored an 8. An instantly hummable melody that feels gentle on the ears, but then you have that super fast backing track behind it with that great beat. The first 9 I awarded was to track 13, Battle 2. The old battle themes from these games are always so catchy. Track 24, Hey Sid, received an 8. This whole damn soundtrack is catchy. Track 28, Battle with the Four Fiends, also scored an 8. The Four Fiends music is great, but the 3DS version does it better. Another 8 with track 29, The Airship. The Land of Summons, track 38, scored an 8. A lovely smooth track filled with atmosphere. And track 42, Within the Giant, got the second 9 of the album. This is a fantastic dungeon track. It has a great melody and again, super fast backing track throughout the song. The following song, track 43, The Final Battle, took the one and only 10 I awarded. Easily my favourite track of the album, and deservedly so. Brilliant tune, and at one point the music just flicks from left to right, which is just so good to hear. In all, a great soundtrack, and you can see the quality of music in the games was really starting to ramp up when they hit the 16-bit era. In 16th place we have Final Fantasy XIV, Death Unto Dawn. Track count 84, total listen time 5 hours, 36 minutes and 10 seconds. This album, like Endwalker, snuck in right at the end. I was mostly done with this script when I discovered this album was available. I had to include it. At the time, a spot of luck, as it made this list into a nice round 40. Now with Endwalker, it is 41. As with the other Final Fantasy XIV soundtracks, they tend to get most of their decent scores from reimaginings of past tracks. Death Unto Dawn is no different. In fact, most of the 10s it gets are from previous games. The soundtrack even borrows a lot from Nier Automata, a game I've never played, but it is on my radar. As such, most of the tracks from Nier tend to get 5, 6 or 7, However, this album also plucks tracks from Final Fantasy 8 and 12. For 12, I've awarded the same scores I gave in the original soundtrack, as those tracks are directly taken from it with no changes as far as I can tell. For Final Fantasy 8, I did re-evaluate the scores as they are essentially remixes of those tracks. This album scored 5 10s, 3 9s and 7 8s. There is a 1 in all of this too, the only one I awarded in this whole experiment. The album opens with track 1, Locus, Duality. I like this, I think it's great. It has a great beat behind it and I awarded it an 8. The song that scored an atrocious score of 1 is track 11, Starlight de Chocobo. There was clearly some comical moment this is used in the game, but this just hurts my ears. With that trash out the way, let's move on to the good stuff. Like some entries before, I'll skip many of the 8s. Here are all of the 8s I awarded to this soundtrack. The next track, 27, Twice Stricken, I originally gave an 8, then I put it up to a 9, but it has randomly played on Spotify a number of times since and it is so good I gave it a 10. That change bumped this whole soundtrack from 17th to 16th. It just kept getting better the more I listened to it. This is fast, heavy and hard. We hit our second 10 with track 38, Battle with an Esper. I love this track, but I'll say no more. Wait for Final Fantasy 12 on this countdown. Track 45, Eternal Wind, Shadowbringers, gets a 9. Another rendition of this amazing piece of music, and this is glorious. From track 56 to track 62, everything is an 8 and above, with 3 10s in here. Track 56 itself, The Black Wolf Stalks Again, garnered a well-deserved 9. The guitar reminds me a bit of Final Fantasy 15, nearly 12 minutes long, and it never outstays its welcome. Track 57, Don't Be Afraid, Shadowbringers, also scored a 9. An amazing rendition of the standard battle music from Final Fantasy 8. Track 58, The Legendary Beast, Shadowbringers, smashed it out of the park with a 10. There is a whimsical style to this version of the song and the instrumentation is out of this world. Unbelievably good take on a classic track. Track 61, The Extreme, Shadowbringers, I would give this an 11 if I could. I really want a Final Fantasy VIII remake now. And track 62, Amy, Shadowbringers, is another smash and a 10 for me. This is just peak piano in the Final Fantasy series. I love this melody so much. This album comes out on top of all the Final Fantasy XIV soundtracks, largely in part thanks to Final Fantasy VIII. My favourite track, however, is Twice Stricken, the only original track I awarded a 10. They did a great job with this one. I do want to give Final Fantasy XIV a go sometime, as it does look incredible and I have heard amazing things about it. The last soundtrack for Final Fantasy XIV lands in 16th place, and the last soundtrack for a game I have not played. Everything from here on out I have played through to completion. In 15th place we have Final Fantasy V. Track count 56, total listen time 2 hours 6 minutes and 38 seconds. It's surprising just how much more music is in Final Fantasy V compared to Final Fantasy IV. The minute count has more than doubled. Final Fantasy V is a great addition to the series, and I love the job system in it. I can't remember much about the story, which I guess is where the game fails. I really want to revisit this one to get it fresh in my mind again. Fortunately, the Pixel remasters have finally come to console, so I will get my chance soon. Final Fantasy V scored 2 10s, 4 9s and 6 8s. A very healthy dose of 7s and 6s too. The first track of the album, main theme of Final Fantasy V, got an 8. One 4 did sneak in here with track 4, Hurry Hurry. You guessed it, another repetitive we need to move fast track. Back to the good stuff, track 3, All Hearts, is the overall theme of the game and it is great. I gave it an 8. Track 14, Cursed Lands, also received an 8. We have to get over halfway through the soundtrack to hit our first 9. Track 31, Home Sweet Home, is an amazing melody and very enjoyable. I would say it is a little unusual. It really leans into the medieval style of music. I know a lot of the games have that setting, but they don't usually have that sound. Track 33, The Airship, scored an 8. A lot of these airship tracks seem to get an 8. We hit the first 10 with track 37, Battle at the Big Bridge. Was there any doubt this would score anything less? The music for this battle is as legendary as the enemy you face within. Gilgamesh is iconic in the series, and this is where it started. Further on into the soundtrack, track 44, Boko's theme, takes a 9. I mean, come on. This is the classic Chocobo theme. Track 49, In Search of Light, grabbed an 8. I really like these march themes. Try walking and listening to this. I guarantee your footsteps will move in time with the music. We get 2 back-to-back 9s with track 50, Decisive Battle. This has amazing, what I assume to be, drums going through it. I just can't help but tap my feet. It has a fast tempo and is worthy of a 9. Track 51, The Final Battle, continues that theme, but adds more gusto to the proceedings and also earns a 9. These 2 tracks are just shy of 10s, but both are very good tracks. We get to track 55, Ending Theme, the penultimate track on the album and a well-earned 10. I feel the ending themes do a fantastic job of retelling the story through music, probably why I love them so much. The last track of the album, track 56, the prelude, ends with an 8. Classic Final Fantasy prelude. I can't give it anything less. But my favourite track goes to Battle on the Big Bridge. It is such an iconic track that has found its way into many games later in the series. A fantastic soundtrack from one of the lesser known titles in the series. In 14th place we have Final Fantasy 13. Track count 85, total listen time 4 hours, 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Poor Final Fantasy 13. This had the number 13 spot but got bumped down when I changed one score on a track on the album that was here in the 14th spot. It's a shame as having Final Fantasy 13 in 13th place felt poetic. Final Fantasy 13 was the reason I bought a PlayStation 3 and I remember how excited I was loading it up for the first time. I mentioned before, I feel Final Fantasy 13 gets a lot of undeserved hate. I understand why some people don't like it as much as others in the series, but I never felt the game was bad. I enjoyed it overall and had a really good time with it. Lightning was a great protagonist, Fang and Sash were also great characters. There may be an argument for the other party members, but I'm not here to talk about the game in that context. I'm here for the music of Final Fantasy 13, and it really does deliver with some fantastic tracks and one track that I would consider to be one of my favourite Final Fantasy tracks of all time. The album scored 5 10s, 7 9s and 11 8s, so you can see the big numbers are rolling in more and more now as we move up this list. So much in fact that I'm going to whiz past the 8s completely and give you a list to peruse at your leisure. I think I'll be skipping a lot of 8s from here on out, as a lot of the soundtracks to come have more and more 9s and 10s. The soundtrack starts very strong with track 1, Prelude to Final Fantasy 13, getting a 9. A great uplifting track to kick off the game. Then you press start and you get track 2, Final Fantasy 13, The Promise. A fantastic tune and lovely main theme that makes up the backbone of the soundtrack and the trilogy for that matter. Great piano work and just brilliant piece of music all around. Worthy of a 10. It doesn't take long to hit another 10 with track 5, Saber's Edge. That piano again is so good, and the brass instruments. I think that's what they are. Again, so good. Track 12, The Vestige, I gave a 9. I like the ethereal sound of this track. It's very mystical, calming and atmospheric. Track 20, Blinded by Light, comes along and earns a 10. The battle music in this game is top notch. That violin and that fast pacing almost sends shivers down my spine. A couple of back-to-back 9s with track 31, March of the Dreadnoughts. This is whimsical and uplifting. I use that word a lot on this one. Track 32, The Gapra Whitewood. I like the way the Gapra Whitewood has this overall calm feeling juxtaposed with the fast beat in the background. This soundtrack does have some of the best background music in it, great for listening to while working or studying I'd say. Track 35, The Sunleth Waterscape, talk about uplifting, and another 10. Great track, great beat, and surprisingly good lyrics and vocals. Sometimes the vocals aren't quite up to scratch, but here it works. I can't help but bob back and forth as I listen to this. We pass a couple of 8s with Sarah's theme and Atonement, and we hit our next 9 with track 58, Fighting Fate. For some, this probably grates a little. I really enjoy it though. I think if I was listening to this and had not played the game, this probably would have been a 5 or maybe even a 4. But having the context of the music, I don't find it grating and it elevates it to a point I can enjoy immensely. Track 63, Will to Fight, was a grower and scored a 9. It gets better with repeat listens. Track 64, Fang's theme, also scored a 9. I just can't help myself but hum along to it. We pass a few more 8s with Chocobo of Pulse, The Yashis Massif and Sulya Springs until we land on the last 10 of the album and one of my favourite tracks of all Final Fantasy. One I would consider putting in my top 10, maybe even top 5. Track 72, Dust to Dust. I can't explain why I love this so much, but I do. I love the music, the lyrics, the composition, the sense of coming to the end of a journey but still having a way to go. There is an air of desperation to it, but also a sense of safety. I get so many emotions from this track, it's just incredible. Unfortunately, the rest of the album cannot reach the dazzling heights of Dust to Dust. There are a couple of 8s with Fabula Nova Crystallis and ending credits, but Dust to Dust is the standout favourite track of this album. Overall, a superb soundtrack, and I feel Masashi Hamauzu really hit this one out the park. I hope I said his name right. It just goes to show if a soundtrack this good could only make it to number 14, how good the rest of the soundtracks really are. In 13th place we have Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. Track count 86, total listen time 3 hours, 48 minutes and 31 seconds. Okay, what can I say about this? We are getting into the heavy hitters now. Of the 86 tracks on this album, only 22 scored a 5. The rest was 6 and above, so you know this means business. This album has some fantastic themes on it. It scored 5 10s, 3 9s and 12 8s. I really love the way they blend the themes from the original into the remake soundtrack. Each track sounds like a love letter to the work that came before it. First up we have track 2, Descendant of Shinobi, which I gave an 8. Catchy as heck. But then track 3, which is the battle edit, launches it up to a 10. The fast pacing and heavier tones of the battle edits are just so good. The way the original theme is used here is incredible. As we go on, we reach track 8, Port Condor. I originally gave this a 9. I wondered why I didn't give it a 10, so I changed it. I love this track. This is the track that bumped this soundtrack up to number 13, knocking Final Fantasy XIII down a peg. It's just so good. We hit a whole load of 8s on the way down the list here with Ramu, Lord of Levin, and A Hero Lost. Track 17, Lackey Beatdown, which I gave an 8, feels like Kill Bill blended with The Matrix and a bit of Deus Ex thrown in there. And of course we have track 18, the Happy Turtle fight song, which would have scored higher if it weren't for the distorted guitar sounds in it.
Gonna get fully wrecked at the Happy Turtle. Wanna get blind drunk at the Happy Turtle.
I did chuckle to myself when this music kicked in during that fight in the game though. At track 20, the Runaround Part 1, we get the most cowboy bebop sounding music ever and a track worthy of a 9. You really could put this over the opening of that show. It's so good. I also gave Runaround Part 3, which is track 23, a 9, but the others scored 6s and 7s. Another 10 comes along at track 27, Good Morning Leprechaun. That saxophone and then that beat comes in at around 19 seconds. So good. Track 28, Main Pillar Maintenance follows, and it's a great cool down track. I gave that an 8. Followed by another 8 with track 29, Hey You Evildoers. Here are the other 8s I awarded on this one. The somber pieces don't last as we get another belter of a 10 with track 30, The Gigantipede. That Wu-Tai theme getting used so expertly here with snippets of Descendant of Shinobi. This is what I mean. These epic tracks aren't just remixes of stuff that has come before. They take themes from several places and craft them into something mighty like a musical trifle for my ears. Incredible. The next track of note comes at track 46, The Crimson Mare. This is the battle with Scarlet. Classic battle theme coming in here, ramped up to a 10 with some very heavy dum-dums. Yes, that's what I'm calling them. We don't get any more 10s, and admittedly the rest of the soundtrack doesn't really reach the heights of the earlier half. But there is one more 9 with track 67, Vice the Immaculate. Don't let your feelings for this fight get in the way of the music. It is incredibly hard to beat, but the music in the battle is very good. The opening of it reminds me of the final battle from Final Fantasy X. It sounds a little repetitive to start with, but it soon changes up and really does feel like a match of epic proportions. My favourite track on this album, however, is track 30, Gigantipede. They managed to take some themes from the original that I liked but didn't love and turn them into something spectacular. I cannot wait to see what they do in Rebirth. In all, a fantastic addition to the Final Fantasy VII Remake family of soundtracks. In 12th place we have Final Fantasy IV DS version. Track count 52, total listen time 1 hour, 43 minutes and 41 seconds. I was wondering how far this would get up the list. 5 spots higher than the original is quite a leap, and deservedly so. The DS, or 3DS, version of Final Fantasy IV was fantastic, and it boggles my mind that Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy VI didn't get the same treatment. I think a lost opportunity there from Square Enix. Just a bit of an odd observation, this soundtrack only seems to be available on YouTube Music as an official playlist. it's not available on Spotify. I wonder if that's just an oversight on Square Enix's part. Track 1, Final Fantasy IV DS opening theme, starts off with an 8. A quick summary, we have 3 10s, 4 9s and 8 8s on the high level, but there are 2 4s. I bet they are annoying short jingles. We'll start with the 4s then. Track 22, Run. Surprise, surprise, no amount of polish will make me like these sorts of tracks. Track 51, The Dancer, got the other 4 and no surprise there either. Prelude, track 2, takes a 9. The prelude here is a much cleaner and all-round better version than the original, and that is to be expected with this remake. It doesn't take long to hit a 10 with track 5, Theme of Love. I gave this an 8 on the original, and here it gets a perfect 10. This is a beautiful rendition of this track and much more pleasant on the ears, with the more modern sounding instrumentation used to compose it. Final Fantasy IV main theme, which is track 8, scored an 8. Just like its original counterpart. Here are the other 8s I awarded on this soundtrack. Track 14, Battle Theme B, also scores a 9 like the original. This is very nearly a 10. Track 39, The Fey Mark, scored a 9. A little unusual for me perhaps, but I find this a nice tune. I get humming it and then it gets stuck in my head. Eventually we hit back-to-back 10s with track 43, Within the Giant. This one is another fantastic March to the End Last Dungeon tune. The main theme in the track is well done, and then you have the climbing and falling scales behind it. This track sings in my ears. The next track, track 44, The Final Battle, is another fantastic final battle track. I really like the use of stereo in this, with the way the music bounces from left to right and back again, just like in the original. I love it when songs do that effectively, and they nailed it here. The epilogues carry on garnishing nice scores with an 8 and an 8 and a 7, and then track 48, Tsukino Akari, ending theme, grabs a 9. Very nice piano, nicely performed lyrics, with that fantastic Theme of Love as the backing track. It is a shame the last 4 tracks on the soundtrack are nothing but jingles. I guess they are there for completion's sake, but I don't think we needed them. My favourite track on this one though is track 43, Within the Giant. It just beats out the other 10s, although any of the 10s on this one can really take that honour. Either way, Final Fantasy IV DS version takes the 12th spot. In 11th place we have Final Fantasy XV. Track count 96, total listen time 5 hours, 4 minutes and 53 seconds. Final Fantasy XV takes the 11th spot. A valiant effort from Yoko Shimomura. I hope I am saying that right, if ever there was one. This game has 7 songs worthy of the perfect 10 from a track list reaching nearly 100, with 8 9s and 11 8s backing it up. A tremendous effort and only just missing out on the top 10, which I thought it would make when I started this experiment. The soundtrack starts with another one of my favourite pieces of music from all of Final Fantasy, and a piece of music that makes me wish I could go back in time and learn to create music like this. I am not exaggerating how good this is. I'm talking about track 1, Somnus, instrumental version. The piano mixed with the strings is so powerful and emotional and sets the tone for what is to come. As this entry has so many 9s and 10s, I have sacrificed talking about those that scored an 8. But I do want to give them their due, so here are the 8s I awarded on this soundtrack. The next 10 comes at track 7, Stand Your Ground. Damn, this album has some really good battle music, and this is no exception. There is something very grand about this music. It really gets the blood pumping. But the best is still to come. Track 13, Hunt or Be Hunted. Easily a 10 and one of my favourite tracks from the series. Again, amazing piano work, and then that beat drops at 1 minute and 29. Just sets my spine alight with electricity. I had this as my ringtone for years. It's shocking to me that it has less than 1 million listens on Spotify. I once listened to a 3-hour long version of this without stopping it, and I never got bored. The build up from 1 minute and 11 to that beat drop with the piano. Oh god, so good. So good! I love doing the hunts in this game just so I could listen to this music. It is funny, we haven't hit a 9 yet. The next is still a 10 with track 19, Ardin. To quote one YouTuber, this tune is dope. Ardin was such a great villain who was criminally underserved in the main story of his game. His tune is awesome though. Track 20, Aggressors, is the first 9 of the soundtrack. Another 9 comes along at track 28, Veiled in Black. Veiled in Black is almost a 10, but something holds it back just a little bit. Track 34, The Fight Is On, grabs another 9. A very pleasant and light-aired battle theme. I can hear the 4 of them shouting battle cries now in my head. Track 39, Apocalypsis Noctis, takes a 9. I can't help but think of Skyrim when I'm listening to this track. We get another 10 now with track 47, Veiled in Black, Arrangement. This version of this track is a better arrangement in my opinion, no pun intended, so I had to give it a 10. I think epic is a fitting way to describe this. Track 57, Up for the Challenge, comes in next with a 9. Again, another great battle theme. Track 62, Noctis, also a 9 and great main theme. I have said it a million times, but that piano is just glorious. One more 9 now with track 71, The Hydrian's Wrath. Another epic tune coming in with a 10 now for track 74, Apocalypsis Aquarius. This plays during one of the most insane battles I think I've seen in a Final Fantasy game. I should note, I haven't played Final Fantasy 16 at the time of writing this. I have heard some of those boss battles are ridiculous. Track 79, Careening into Danger, scored a 9 from me. Again, the battle music in this game, for the most part, is incredibly good. I think the only battle music I didn't like that much is the demon battle music. And finally, with all the 9s covered, we had one more 10 to highlight, and could there be any doubt as to what it is? We have had the instrumental version, and now we have the performed piece. Track 90, Somnus. What a fantastic piece of music. The voice, the strings, and of course that piano, all blended into an audible feast for the ears. My favourite track depends on my mood. Somnus is just incredible and one of my favourite themes from the series, but my absolute favourite whenever I think of this soundtrack is Hunt or Be Hunted. The track is like ambrosia to me, nectar of the gods. It ticks every box I like about music and probably one of my top 5 favourite tracks from the entire series. Final Fantasy 15 narrowly misses out on the top 10, a fantastic soundtrack to a rather enjoyable game. And there we have it. Thank you very much for sticking with me throughout this 1.5 hour episode. Wow, I never thought it would stretch out this long. This was a lot of fun to put together, and just doing something I really enjoy for the sheer pleasure of it is what this is all about. What a fantastic selection of soundtracks featured in this episode. We finished off the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy, polished off the last of the Final Fantasy 14 albums, and hit all 3 Final Fantasy 15 soundtracks in one episode. I had an absolute blast putting this all together. I cannot wait to start part 3. I had hoped I would have all 3 parts out before Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but that is not going to happen. I haven't even finished the script for part 3 yet, but hopefully I'll steal a few minutes here and there to get that out as soon as possible. I really appreciate everyone who has taken the time to listen to my ramblings, and I hope you have enjoyed this series so far. I am very passionate about video game music, but I often find it difficult to articulate my thoughts, so I hope I have done it justice here. If you did enjoy this, please hit that like button and let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If this list so far has you absolutely disgusted, feel free to hit the dislike button and let me know which soundtrack you love has not even made it into the top 10. We have some truly amazing soundtracks to come, the best of the best, and I cannot wait to dive into it. Once again, thank you for your time, and I hope to see you in part 3. Cheers.
That's it! I've come up with a new recipe.